brings us to Jennifer Newman, who is a brand director by day and the founder of Creating Your Own Path. It's a podcast and media company aimed at bridging the gap between creative endeavors and career fulfillment. The podcast launched in early 2014, featuring so many interviews with inspiring individuals and change makers from creative industries all over the country. I've known and followed Jen for years and truly love her mix of tough, strong woman who's not afraid to be vulnerable. She's curious and persistent and brave, and I'm so happy I was able to convince her to come up here today. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Newman.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I have to say that it's really pretty amazing. I know probably 75% of you in this room, and I can't thank you enough for showing up today. It means a lot. So, as Rebecca mentioned, my name is Jen. I'm a brand director by day for a statewide organization here in Sacramento, and I also run a media company on the side called Creating Your Own Path. And that actually began as a podcast. Again, some of you are probably familiar with it. I actually have a lot of past guests in the audience, including Rebecca. So that's pretty fun too. And the goal of the show is to unearth the stories of others so that we can uncover and better understand our own stories. Because the narratives, the stories that we tell ourselves and others about sort of how we're making our way in the world are incredibly important. And today I want to talk with you about claiming those narratives when you're going through the end of something. So obviously that's kind of perfect because that's today's theme. So as you might imagine, this theme, it lends itself to some pretty heavy topics. And that's okay, because we've all been through heavy moments, right? So I'm gonna make you guys participate, because it makes me less nervous. But show of hands, how many of you have been through the end of something? Raise your hands high, right? Something that felt momentous. Oh, okay, so keep your hands up. No, keep them up. And look around. Look behind you. Look at that. That means we're not alone, which is fantastic. That feels really, really good. So I have one more question for you guys. How many of you woke up this morning? Please raise your hands. Okay. You took a breath, right? Maybe you stretched a little, you got some coffee. The overachievers in the room, maybe you worked out. Congratulations for you. So again, I'm glad everybody raised their hands, because what that means is that we either have survived or we are currently surviving the really, really hard thing that we've been through. And today, I want to talk about the things that we don't generally talk about in public when we're going through the end of something, when something's really difficult and hard. And so, like I said, I don't know if I can tackle this theme without things getting a little uncomfortable. There's going to be some vulnerability. There might be some tears. I'm a bit of a crier. You've been warned. But I promise to throw in as many jokes as possible. Like I said, it's going to get weird. It's fine. So I need to take a sip of water here. Rebecca made the joke about the straw. That was for me. All right. So on September 8th, 2017, my then husband of nearly 10 years and partner of 15 came home very late from work, laid down next to me in the dark, and told me he was leaving me for his coworker. I know, I haven't said this in front of this many people before, so. And in reality, that's not exactly how it happened, right? There are always details that are important. So he actually came home late from work, and I was mad, right? He didn't tell me he was gonna be late. So we had some words, and I laid down in bed. And then he came in, and he laid down, he turned off the light. That's important. He turned off the light, laid down next to me, and he said, "We need to talk." And I said, "About what?" And he said, "About us." And the moment he said that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It's actually happening right now. And I said, hold that thought. And so I got up out of bed, and I walked across the room and turned on the light. And I went back and I sat down on the bed, and I looked at him and I said, whatever you are about to say to me, you are going to say it to my face. And now I'm telling you these details not because I need you to feel pity or feel bad for me, because nobody actually needs that when they're going through something hard, right? I can see some of you nodding, thank you. And I'm certainly not telling you these things because I need you to hate him. I don't even hate him, right? So let's all save our collective energy for something that's more fruitful and interesting, right? I'm telling you this because it happened. Those are the facts. And I think that we can glean sort of lessons from all the things that happen to us. And technically, I'm also telling you because of this. So I know some of you have read this book. It's Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And in it, she says, you own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better, right? Yeah, clap for that. That's good. So if you haven't, check it out from the library. Check out the book from the library. Let's just all make all the connections today. So I'm also telling you this because something strange came over me in those moments. I was hyper aware, and I don't know why, I can't explain it, but I was hyper aware of everything, right? The light, the sounds in our quiet house, what it felt like to sit on the edge of the mattress, that dip in the mattress, I can actually remember what that felt like, and the wild look in his eyes. I will never speak for him, but he looked terrified by what he was about to do. And so the first lesson here today is that if you are going through something and there's even a small feeling, a tiny inkling that comes over you telling you to change the situation, you have every right to do so by advocating for yourself. For me, it was as simple and as important as turning on that light. And what followed, sorry, I lost my spot, you guys. But what followed were, that moment of him telling me that it was over and me knowing enough to know that I needed to turn on that light. What followed were days and weeks and months of me reconciling the simultaneous act of tearing apart the life that we had built together and cobbling together and kind of trying to imagine what my life would look like on my own. And that's when things get really weird, right? You're feeling all of these emotions. You're also dealing with a lot of logistics. Anytime there's an end, I don't care if it's a divorce, a death, the end of a job, it doesn't matter. There are always logistics to handle, right? But you're also dealing with this like strange brew of emotions that comes up. And things get super weird. But it's also where all of the cliches come out. And you know the ones I'm talking about, right? They're delivered with nothing but love, but they're utterly useless when you're in the thick of something. Like, all good things must come to an end. Don't say this if somebody's going through a divorce. Please, I beg of you. Another good one is when one door closes, another one opens. I don't ever want to hear this one again. And it's for the best is a tough one. This is tough because it's probably true, but that doesn't mean it's helpful in the moment. And the reason I'm kind of picking on these is because what they do is they sort of imply that we should just get over it. They smooth on past all of the messy bits when the end of something meets the beginning of another. And because you all know this because you all raise your hands, when something ends and something begins, there's no space in between. It's instant. But there's a whole mess of stuff that has to happen for you to actually move on, right? And these imply that we don't get to feel the messy bits in the middle. it's like, okay, pack it up, put it in a box, tuck it under the bed, in the closet, whatever. Don't deal with it, don't feel it, and by all means, please don't ever talk about it, right? Because that makes people uncomfortable, which is why these come out. But I'm here to tell you that that's not real. It's not real. And it's not where growth happens, and it's also not where healing takes place. And when we're like equal parts excited for a new beginning and so incredibly sad about the future that will just no longer be happening, it's really important for us to allow ourselves to sit with that juxtaposition of emotions. And so this juxtaposition of emotions also showed up for me, excuse me, almost exactly 1 year before my ex came home and initiated our divorce. On September 5th, my stepmom, Debbie, passed away from ovarian cancer at the age of 58. She had been sick for over a year, and the morning she passed away, we got the call. It was, kind of in the middle of the night. But we got a call to come to the hospital. She had been in the ICU in a hospital in Oregon, and we all, we had been staying in the area, and so we all came to the hospital, and we got there, and, you're in the ICU, so we were on, there's double doors, right? We were on one side, and the ICU was on the other. And I watched my dad, who's in the audience today, and he okayed me telling this story, by the way. He walked through those doors, and on his face, I could see like equal parts resignation, relief because she wasn't hurting anymore, and a deep, deep sadness. And like I said, I'm sitting here tearing up, right? And grief is really freaking weird because, and I need you all to just, I'm asking in advance, don't judge me. Because he was walking through those doors and I couldn't stop thinking about Patrick Swayze. Told you, it's weird. It's really weird. And so let me explain. So for those of you who are young enough in the audience who don't know who Patrick Swayze is, bless you. But also, he had passed away several years prior. So just to set the scene, just in case you haven't been on like Wikipedia or whatever. I don't know. But see, my stepmom, she loved Patrick Swayze. And I mean like loved Patrick Swayze. So if Dirty Dancing was on one of those like cable movie channels, we were watching Dirty Dancing, period. The other one is Roadhouse, I think. But that's because Sam Elliott is in that one too, and that was like a twofer, right? So she loved both. And so, anyway, so that's why, that's not why. I was thinking of Patrick Swayze, you know what I'm saying. So I hugged my dad, we all did, we all hugged my dad. And as we pulled away from the hug, I said, Dad, I said something like, I can't help it, but wherever she is right now, 100%, she is for sure Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze. And we did that. We were laughing, right? But we were also crying. And we were standing in the ICU where laughing doesn't happen. And so I'm sure we looked ridiculous, but both emotions bubbled up, and so we went with it. And fast forward a year, right, I'm moving through this divorce, and I'm feeling everything. I'm feeling deep sadness, extreme happiness, fear of the unknown, because there are a lot of unknowns when you're going through something like that. And I'm feeling excitement about the possibilities that lie ahead, right? And I also felt loneliness, like I've never experienced before. But I also felt gratitude because I no longer had to compromise who I am, what I need, my desires, my goals. I didn't have to compromise those anymore for somebody who no longer saw me. And so when I was trying to explain this strange, and these emotions, right, we're feeling them, and they're at 11. They are turned all the way up. And I was trying to explain this to my friends and my family and my therapist. Hey, therapy. And I realized that these weren't mood swings. I wasn't swinging from one extreme emotion to the next. They were happening concurrently at the same time. And so I had to check myself. I'm thinking, am I losing it? Like, is this how people crack? You know, because I'm feeling all the things very, very, very deeply. And the answer is no. I'm not about to crack. It's just grief. And it's completely normal. So the next lesson I would love to share is that when we're going through something and grief is, invited to the party, we owe it to ourselves to allow for those conflicting emotions to come up. We have to pay attention to them. And we have to just let ourselves experience that completely confusing combination and forget, no matter how many times they come our way, we just sort of have to forget those shiny, cliche, overused platitudes and grieve in a way that serves us. And another thing that we really like to do as humans, and I'm betting you all can relate to this, is that when we're facing something difficult, we really like to keep it to ourselves. We like to hunker down, right? We kind of go into survival mode, like lick your wounds in private sort of thing, like you don't want anybody to see what's happening. And in terms of my divorce, my ex-husband actually asked me to keep this divorce quiet, which is hilarious. Thank you for laughing. Yeah, thank you. I think he forgot who he married, but that's okay. So he asked me to keep it quiet. He didn't want me to go public, and then he also asked me not to tell my friends and family, which of course I vetoed immediately. But I did keep it quiet for about a month. And we can speculate, I certainly have, about why he wanted me to not go public with the information. But he had his reasons. None of that actually matters for our purposes here today. But all I knew is that I was going to need my larger community, this community, all of you who've shown up today, if I was going to survive this thing, if I was going to make it through. And this is a really hard picture for me to look at. So eventually I pulled the plug on the silence in early October 2017. It was about a month after he decided we would be ending our marriage, I shared an abbreviated, very PC, professional version of the story on social media. And to kind of give you guys a little bit of background, I had owned a business for 7 years at this point, and I like to call my community a small but mighty community of really amazing humans on the internet and in person. And I had also been an active member of the Sacramento professional community and creative community for almost 2 decades at this point. And so I had built this community and this business based on things like openness, honesty, vulnerability. And here I was keeping something quiet, right? I was hiding something, and it felt awful. It felt terrible. Because it was as though I should feel ashamed of this thing that was happening, and I actually didn't feel any shame. I was doing this for somebody else. And so I told my ex to get his business in order because I was going public, which sounds very dramatic. It wasn't that dramatic. Anyway, we won't get into that story. And then I did. I shared what had been happening in my life, and again, I kept it pretty much about me and my business. Dragging people's names through the mud is not really my jam. So I kept it pretty civil. And when I posted this, I spent almost 5 hours that day responding to some of the most beautiful comments and DMs and text messages and phone calls that I've ever received. My community, again, this community, they showed up. You all showed up for me. And it was beautiful, and I will forever be grateful for it. What also happened, though, is that I ended up getting so many messages from people, women, primarily women, who said, I've been divorced for 6 years and have never talked about it publicly. I've gone through this before. Nobody knew about it. I felt too much shame, they said. sharing my story with anybody outside of my immediate family. And so I didn't. And that gutted me. That gutted me. Because they didn't get to receive the love from the community that I had received. And I can't imagine doing it without that. And so for 5 hours I responded, and I cried for myself and for others, and I decided that if there's going to be one like cliche overused phrase that I'll accept in my life, it's this one. It's okay to not be okay. This is a really important one, right? It's okay. It's okay to go to therapy. For the people in the back, it's okay to go to therapy, just so you know. It's not just for broken people. It should be for all people. It's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to talk publicly about what you're going through. I mean, make it tasteful, right? Don't be those people on Facebook. But it's okay to talk, you know the ones. It's okay to talk about the parts of your story that might feel scary to talk about. So if there's anything I want you all to walk away with today, it's that no matter what's happening, we get to claim our narrative. We get to do things the way we need to do things. So when something bad is happening, you get to hit pause and make sure it's happening in a way that you need it to happen. Like, for me, my ex dropped those words, "we need to talk," and I turned on the goddamn light. He was actually going to try and divorce me in the dark. It's not okay. When you're grieving a loss, it's going to be very, very weird and very difficult. You might talk about Patrick Swayze in a really inappropriate place like the ICU. And you can laugh, it's fine. As long as you're dealing with these conflicting emotions and you're not hurting yourself or others, you get to do it in your own way, in a way that serves you. And last but not least, I would love it if we could all just give ourselves and each other permission to just not be okay for a little while when we're going through hard things. I think the more that we internalize and adopt that just as a society, the better off we'll be. So when you think about everything that's possible between the beginning and the ending of your life, there's so much good. There's so much goodness that can happen in a lifetime. And also, life will continually serve up opportunities for us to go through really, really, really hard things. Really hard things. And so, I believe, truly, that we will all be better off if we can give ourselves permission to claim our narratives in however that works for us, whatever shows up for you when we're facing the end of something. Thank you.